Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, August 3rd, and it is time for Mantra Monday. We have been exploring the opulence of the Absolute in Bhagavad Gita as it is. And so this is the Bhagavad Gita from the Bhakti tradition, the Bhakti Yoga tradition in the Brahma Sampradaya. To get all geeky on you, I'd like to give you a new thing to chew on every week other than what we're chewing on, which is a lot. And today is another very interesting verse, and I think that's going to resonate with a lot of you people that practice yoga, the yogis. But even just from a historical point of view, a cosmic point of view, the history of the cosmos is what the Vedas are dealing with. The beauty of these books of knowledge is that it is very compassionate and, of course, talking about what we like to call the human condition here on Earth. And so it is very, Earth-centric. Of course, it is a divine conversation between Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, and Prince Arjuna, who is considered to be the most glorious of all the Pandavas. So the setting once again is the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Parthasarathi, that is Krishna, who is driving the chariot of Partha. Partha is another name for Arjuna because he is the son of Queen Kunti, and Queen Kunti is the aunt of Lord Krishna. So in this verse today, it's talking about some very interesting things having to do with vibrations. So let me see who's here. I'll give it a moment. I hope you all had a good weekend. I hope you had a safe weekend. So as usual, I will chant the verse in Sanskrit. Then I will read the word for word transliteration or synonyms in English. And then I will read the purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami. And then I will offer my insights, what I've come up with. And I really appreciate doing this with y'all every week because I learn a lot too. And that's the nature of spiritual knowledge, is that it is ever fresh and it's always revealing itself to you, if we're attentive and a little bit curious. Okay, so here we go. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, the verse is in the description down below. And if you're watching this on Facebook Live at about 9:35 a.m., the verse, the mantra will appear on this page for your reference. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita as it is, Chapter 10, Opulence of the Absolute, Text 25. mahā-ṛṣīṇāṁ bhṛgur aham, girām asmy ekam akṣaram, yajñānām japa-yajño sthāvarāṇāṁ Himālayaḥ. I'm going to repeat that. mahā-ṛṣīṇāṁ bhṛgur aham, girām asmy ekam akṣaram, yajñānām japa-yajño sthāvarāṇāṁ Himālayaḥ. Okay, so the word for word translation is as follows. mahā-ṛṣīṇām, among the great sages. Brighu, aham, I am. Girām, of vibrations. Asmi, I am. Ekam, akṣaram. Okay, this is longer, excuse me. Ekam akṣaram praṇava yajñānām, of sacrifices. japa-yajñaḥ, chanting, asmi, I am, sthāvarāṇāṁ, of immovable things, Himalaya, the Himalayan mountains. Translation: of the great sages, I am Brighu. Of vibrations, I am the transcendental Om. Om. Of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, japa. And of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. So the purport now. Brahma, the first living creature within the universe, created several sons for the propagation of various kinds of species. Among these sons, Brighu is the most powerful sage. Of all transcendental vibrations, the Om, or Omkar, represents Krishna. Of all sacrifices, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the purest representation of Krishna. Sometimes animal sacrifices are recommended, but in the sacrifice of Hare Krishna, there is no question of violence. It is the simplest and the purest. Whatever is sublime in the worlds is a representation of Krishna. Therefore, the Himalayas, the greatest mountains in the world, also represent him. The mountain named Meru was mentioned in a previous verse, but Meru is sometimes movable, whereas the Himalayas are never movable. Thus, the Himalayas are greater than Meru. So, I'm going to break it down for you here. And actually, I want to get something. So I'll be right back. It's part of my demo this morning. And she's back. Okay, so this is a great verse, and this is a verse that should be of great interest again to yogis. So, in particular, so he starts off here of saying, of the great sages, I am Brighu, and then right in the purport, it talks about Brahma. Now, I've spoken about Brahma before. I spoke about Brahma last week, and I think I spoke about Brahma the week before. And also, if you search the playlists for this Mantra Monday, I believe that I have spoken of Brahma in relationship to the four Kumaras, and also in relationship to the creation of the universe. I've talked about the Brahma Samhita. But to recap and to reiterate, Brahma is the first created being in the universe. In whatever material universe there is, Brahma is always the first created being. Remember, Brahma is a post. And so a very, very pious living entity who desires that position of creation after sitting in meditation for millennia, much longer than our lifespan, hears the word tapa. And after Brahma hears the word tapa, he understands that he is to sit in meditation. That is, meditation and going within and discovering yourself is a form of sacrifice. It's sacred, in other words. That's what sacrifice means. To make sacred. So getting to know yourself and understanding yourself is extremely important. So important that all the great personalities in the universe will sit in meditation. We talked about Lord Shiva sitting in meditation last week. Also, when you get into the pastimes of Lord Krishna in the 10th canto, and you talk about his daily activities, it's mentioned that he sits in meditation. Of course, he's meditating upon himself, so there is some humor here. I've always found that very, very humorous. But at any rate, Brahma, he creates several suns in the beginning, because the whole idea is to populate the universe. Because remember, the living entities, the jivas, who have been in that state of cosmic sleep, wrapped up in the Lord's transcendental body in Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, want to come out. They want to enact their actions, they want to enact their karmas, or in some case their vikarmas. And so there has to be an agency, of course, to bring them forth. We need parents. So Brahma is responsible for creating the first living beings that are going to create the different species. And there's many different types of species in the world, of course, in the animal kingdom, the aquatics, and so on and so forth. But there are also many different types of species of human being. Now, here on this planet, we are most familiar with the monkeys, the gorillas, the chimpanzees. In the Vedas, these are actually considered to be a type of human being, a species of human being. But here, in this case, Brighu was one of Brahma's sons and one of his most powerful sons. So I found a little background on Brighu that I want to read to you. I'll read that to you, I guess, in a moment. He also mentions in this verse, good morning, Henry. Krishna also mentions in this verse that of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, japa. So, in other words, that is the personal meditation that a bhakti yogi will do, that does on a daily basis, ideally on a daily basis. And this is something that we can do silently. And this is the tool that is used to chant japa. So these are called Rudra malas simply because they're red in color. But you can chant on these. There are 108 beads. 108 is considered to be a very auspicious number. Why? Because there are 108 gopis. The 108 gopis are the most intimate associates of the Lord, and they are the most exalted, and they are the most devoted. They're the most ecstatic. So that is why 108 is considered an auspicious number. You will see the number 108, 108, 108 coming up a lot when we're talking about bhakti yoga, or when you're talking about quote-unquote Hinduism, unquote, which is a bit of a misnomer. It doesn't really explain that much. Bhakti yogis, these japa beads, these actually belong to my mother. But generally you will see, and I have them in my archives here, mostly because I don't want anything to happen to them, but I also have a set of tulsi beads. Tulsi beads, it's a sacred wood, and bhakti yogis generally chant on tulsi beads after they've become initiated into the chanting of the holy names. So the initiation is a introduction. It is like a covenant. It is linked to a vow to repeat these vibrations every day on a daily basis. Why? Why would you repeat something like this to yourself every day? Well, the first reason is, and the most important reason is, to maintain our consciousness above the material atmosphere and the material contamination that we find ourselves swimming in in this world. I mean, all you have to do is watch the news for 10 minutes, and within 10 minutes you are completely inundated with tragedy and corruption and, all sorts of unsavory things. So particularly in this age, although this is a very ancient practice, sages have been engaging in this practice since time immemorial, japa is recommended as your personal security and safety net to get through your day-to-day. Because again, the sound vibration on the spiritual platform, on the absolute platform, is actually non-different from God himself. There is no difference between the name and the name, fame, paraphernalia, entourage of the Lord. It's one and the same thing. So I've mentioned before that in this material world, in general, if you're thirsty and you chant water, 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 that's not going to quench your thirst. You actually have to get yourself some water and then drink the water to quench your thirst. And it can be a very elaborate process trying to attain clean drinking water. But on the spiritual platform, which is all hinged around sound vibration, it's easy. All you need is a tongue and a pair of ears to hear, and you are in that material atmosphere. So japa is our personal protection. It is prophylactic, meaning that it's antiseptic. I'm not talking about rubbers here for sex life. I'm talking about prophylactic in its original definition, and it being protective, a protective shield. What else can I say? Also, he says that he is the transcendental Om. So if you've been to a yoga class and you've been to a yoga studio, chances are that either in the beginning or at the end, and sometimes both, the yoga instructor will conclude the yoga practice by having everyone chant Om, Om, Om 3 times. And that is, the idea is that is to seal in the practice, but it is to connect you, because yoga after all means union, to connect you with the source of the creation, because it means union, or it means to yoke up. To yoke up to what, right? We want to yoke up to our spiritual nature, and yoking up to our spiritual nature, of course, means yoking up to the origin of that. So this Om is a condensation of the Supreme. Sometimes also you'll see Omkars or the flag on top of different temples. So it's just, again, another way to be able to remember the Supreme, to remember his opulences, because of course when you start contemplating everything that the Lord represents and everything that he means, then it becomes quite vast, quite complex, quite sophisticated, and quite beautiful. And so this chapter again is just giving us a glimpse of this splendor. Also, he says here that of immovable things that he is the Himalayan mountains. So if you didn't catch last week I went into a lot of detail about the Himalayan mountains and the mountain chains and how big they are and how tall they are and what the atmosphere is like in several of these mountain chains, and of course Mount Meru. So Mount Meru, of course, is considered to be the axis of the Earth planet. It helps keep the Earth in place, and it is also the, how shall I say, it's kind of like the scene or the landscape or the environment of a tug of war, literally, between the Asuras and between the Asuras, which is tied to many great personalities and many great things. There was a churning of the ocean of milk, right? And Mount Meru was used as the support for doing that. The great serpent Vasuki was kind of like the rope that they were using, tied around Mount Meru. The Asuras were on one side, and the Suras were on the other side. The demigods were on one side, in other words, and the Rakshasas, the demons, were on the other side. and there was a great tug of war going back and forth, churning this ocean of milk. That's a story for another day, but that's just to give you an idea, you know, of the scale, again, of Mount Meru and the Himalayan mountains that are around that. So the Himalayas have been a great source of attraction for human beings for a long time. It's where the sages go to sit in meditation. Great sages live in various caves up there, the extremely renounced, if they are not in the mode of teaching. There are also a lot of ashrams in the Himalayan mountains where people can go and learn about self-control and meditation and how to perform austerities and to study the Vedas. This is still going on these days, even in Kali Yuga. And Prabhupada mentions here that the Himalayas are immovable. So Mount Meru moves on its axis, you know, and is used, again, as this kind of churning rod. But the Himalayan mountains are immovable. So anything that is considered to be immovable is also considered to be great, because, of course, one of the symptoms of living in this material world is that there's always changes and there's migrations and so on and so forth. So towns or businesses become famous, for example, for being unchanging, for staying the same. So what to speak of the Himalayan mountains. And then here it says, of great sages I am Brighu. So let's dig into who Brighu is a little bit. This is really super interesting. So I found some reference here. Okay, mahā-ṛṣī. So maha means great, rishi means sage. So the great sage, Brighu, was one of the 7 great sages, the Sapta Rishis, one of the many Prajapatis, the facilitators of creation created by Brahma, the first compiler of predictive astrology, and also the author of the Brighu Samhita, the astrological Jyotish classic. Brighu is considered a Manasaputra, a mind-born son of Brahma. So mana means the mind. Putra means, you know, offspring. It means offspring. That's what putra means. So I think I mentioned last week, for example, you know, Brahma, he is the creator, right? So he has great facility to create. He has been endowed with incredible mystic powers. So just by using his mind, he is able to create offspring. He doesn't have to go through the process of finding a suitable wife or a suitable woman and then engaging in sexual intercourse, and then the wife having to go through a 9-month period of gestation, and then, you know, the child being born after that. And so why? Well, when you're trying to populate the universe, it's going to take an awfully long time if you have to go through that process. So Brahma, again, being the grandfather of the universe and being the co-creator of the universe and being the original son from Lord Vishnu, in order to facilitate his dharma, in order to facilitate his occupation as is befitting his position, he is given these kinds of abilities, this kind of facility to be able to do that. We have a similar thing as human beings, although it's a much smaller in scale, right? But we see throughout the universe that there are these parallels, you know. So as human beings, we have been gifted with imagination, and we can think of something into being. First, we have to visualize it, and then from that visual process from within, we take the steps in order to create it. Of course, the process that we have to go through is a little bit more laborious. We can't just think of something and then, there it is. Well, actually, if you're a mystic yogi, you can obtain things in that way. But still, it's not on the platform of Lord Brahma. So getting back to Brighu and the creation of Brighu. So in other words, Lord Brahma thought, I would like a son like this, to be able to do this. And that is how Lord Brahma was born. So Brighu again is a Manasaputra. He is a mind-born son, much in the way that Lord Shiva was. We talked about that last week. And much in the way also that the 4 Kumaras were born from the mind. So it's interesting when you think that these sages are in the Brahminical class and are guiding society. Then it goes on to say, according to the Manu Smriti, Brighu was a compatriot and lived during the time of Manu, the progenitor of humanity. Brighu had his ashram, or his hermitage, in the Varashvar River, which is a tributary of another river, in the Vedic state of Brahmavarta. Okay, and the whole point is to realize yourself. So one of the tools that is used in Vedic culture is astrology, but specifically the practice of Jyotish, which differs from Western astrology, in that it is predictive in nature, but in a very detailed way. So Brighu wrote a book called the Brighu Samhita. Yeah, there you go. So I'm not going to pretend that I am a Jyotish astrologer. I am not. I've had my chart done by a Jyotishi. But Jyotish is pretty amazing in that it can predict things, millennia ahead. There's all kinds of, Puranas and Upanishads, which will talk about different personalities, for example, or just different world events, that have been destined to happen. So if you're curious and you want to know what's in store for you in life, or perhaps how you can ameliorate things, Jyotish is a very, very interesting and can be a very awesome tool to have at your disposal. Of course, you want to find a Jyotish astrologer who is positive, not someone who is negative, right? So what I find interesting about this verse also, again, is that the Lord is always presenting himself as someone who is helpful, right? So, Brighu is there to illuminate and to help the human being understand who he is, understand what his position is in a particular lifetime, how he can navigate that, what could be the best occupation for him, even, the best places to live, what different things will be happening at different points of life, how to ameliorate different things in his life, how to engage in sacrifice. I'm not talking about, animal sacrifice here. It's mentioned in this verse. We're not talking about animal sacrifice. We're talking about sanctifying our life and sanctifying our mind, just like we do here every Monday by chanting these mantras. Of course, again, chanting the names, of the Lord is the easiest and the fastest and the most intimate way to actually hang out with him. What else can I say? What else can I say about this? Does anyone have a question? Anything that they would like to ask about this? No? No questions? Okay, that's fair enough. Anything else that I want to tell you this morning? Let me see. Oh, I want to tell you that this weekend I made it to the Mushroom Meadow. Wait, is it the Mushroom Meadow Mountain or Mushroom Mountain Farm? Which is this very awesome place where they bring in bales of hay, they bring in manure, actually horse manure. A lot of it is horse manure from locality from Del Mar. And they mix it all up with gypsum, and then they sprinkle their mushroom spores on that. And then after they harvest their mushrooms, they have to, dispose of this compost, which is super rich and full of nutrients. And so it's open to school groups, it's open to gardeners, it's open to farmers, it's open to whoever who can come and cart this stuff away and then use it in their own gardens. And the soil is a very, very deep brown color and a rich color. And I got some this weekend. So as you know, I'm very interested in self-sufficiency and homesteading. This whole idea of, being able to grow your own food, this isn't anything new. Actually, the idea is simple living and high thinking, not to complicate our lives with a lot of clutter and not to necessarily be overly dependent on systems that create a lot of distress in this world. So I'm very, very excited about that. I'm going to post a little film that I made of us, shoveling this stuff into barrels on Saturday. I'm going to post that on the Yoga on the Dance Floor group, which is where I share a lot of things about gardening and all of that. So I'm just at the beginning stages of this, but it's exciting, and I hope to have a friend of mine come out maybe in the springtime and really kind of show me, the basics and the ins and outs of moving forward with the garden. So that's what's up here in Akayani world. I hope that you all are well, and I will see some of you perhaps over on Instagram at about 9:35 a.m. where we can get into this Mantra Monday for my Instagram peeps. So I'm wishing you a beautiful rest of your week. I hope you found this informative, and I will see you later. Bye-bye now.